We've heard a lot about success today, a lot of all this great stuff. You know, it makes me think about, remember Highlights for Children and Goofus and Gallant? Gallant did everything right, and then there was Goofus. Remember that? Well, I get to talk about Goofus. It's kind of a fun thing, actually. So I've developed a simple way of thinking about this in conjunction with Brent, because Brent and I have done several segments on technology for business' sake about what we call social CRM failure. Now, that's not something that happens when people get the technology wrong. That typically doesn't cause the problem. The problem is generally what happens when you use the technology wrong. The technology works, but you've done something wrong to make it not quite do what you wanted it to do. So let's see here if I can, oops, well, that would figure. See, social CRM failure right there on the spot. I'm going to allow Brent to remedy this for me here. Before I get started, let me tell you about what Sugar CRM is real quickly. Sugar CRM is a CRM vendor. That's pretty much all we sell. We sell CRM. We have, I think, the third most live heartbeats of any CRM vendor out there. And we are built around the idea of being flexible and easy to use and easy to integrate with. So there you go. That gives you a kind of a nice idea of what we are all about. Now I'd like to teach you a word here. If you've never seen this word before, it's one of my favorite words. Let's all say it together. Schadenfreude. Yeah, it's. Thanks for trying. I know it's late. What that word means is pleasure derived from the misfortune of others. Now, I'm not saying that you should laugh at what comes up next or revel in the agony of these companies as they suffer through their social CRM failures. I'm not saying that at all. You can if you want, but I'm not saying you should do that. What I want to start here is by saying we are smack dab in the middle of the social age, so these things are going to happen. These numbers are fantastic. The Pew Institute, just in December, all these great figures. Look at this. The participation numbers are fantastic. People are using this stuff left, right, and center. It is just a part of the fabric of life. So there's no reason we shouldn't be using this stuff, right? Look at these numbers. These are fantastic. 74% of consumers rely on social networks to guide purchase decisions. 59% of B2B buyers. This is all super awesome. Things are going great. That's why you're all here, and you learned so much about this earlier. Guess what? It's not what we're here to discuss right now. We're going to talk about something totally different. We're going to talk about the social age equaling not just a shorter time to success, but a shorter time to social CRM fiasco. And before you start thinking this is something that only happens to companies that are inexperienced, don't have the assets, don't have the resources, people who sort of haphazardly fall into these problems, look at some of these names on here. These are fairly big companies that have suffered some fairly big and very public problems. Now, the nice thing if you're a small business is that if you screw up somehow, it's going to be somewhat contained to the people who know you. But if you're a guy like FedEx, or if you're a guy like United Airlines or Burger King, people are going to know about it, they're going to talk about it, and it's going to sort of spiral out of control. So what do? You seek to avoid having it happen in the first place. Social media failures are avoidable. I love this picture because how did that guy miss that banana peel? There's nothing else around. I don't get it. But social media failures are a lot like that. You can see them coming if you think hard enough and you understand about what's on the horizon for you. So let's talk about the 3 Ps. This is based on a story that I developed based on some of the conversations that Brent and I had a while back. The 3 Ps, very simple. Just keep them in mind as you're developing some kind of social media effort or strategy. 3 Ps. Policy. You heard a little bit about that earlier, the last session. People, very, very important, especially anything involving CRM is really about people. And just paying attention. And paying attention is not just simply looking at your dashboard and seeing who's listening to you or who's talking about you, but what's going on, what's the context for what you're doing socially, what's going on around your company, what's going on with your customers. So let's look at each of these individually with some examples. Here are some great disasters. American Red Cross. The employees were tweeting about getting hammered on beer after their volunteer sessions were over on the corporate account. That always looks great. Casey Movers, that's a small business fail where the sales VP, 18 months after the fact, found a bad review on Yelp and then threatened the Yelper with legal action. Probably not the best thing to do, not a smart thing to do. StubHub and KitchenAid on the same week, I believe. StubHub had an employee call his job a stub-sucking hellhole, among other things. And then somebody at KitchenAid on the corporate account said horrible things about the president's dead mother. Probably not a really recommended approach to things. People problems. These are people problems. All of CRM, as far as I'm concerned, starts with hiring. Now, CRM is described as the technology a lot of times. It's really a discipline enabled by a technology. When I hear somebody say, I bought a CRM, To me, it's like putting a catcher's mitt on the table saying, I bought baseball. No, you bought a tool that helps you play baseball. So CRM application is not CRM. CRM is a discipline. It's a bigger thing than that. And it starts with who you hire to be the face of your company and who you hire to interact with your customers. Increasingly, that is becoming everybody in your company. Customers are no longer choosing the options to get to you that they had in the past through sales or through support or service. They can really get to you through a lot of different means. So you've got to be careful about who you hire and who you put in the front lines. Customers now can contact everyone in your business, and trust has always been a gigantic concept in CRM, but it's even more so in the CRM world. So the bottom line is this. When you're afraid of letting people use social media or be part of social media or be a social media manager, you've got to hire people you would trust. And actually, anybody in your organization, why would you hire anybody that you don't trust to talk to customers? I mean, really, honestly, I know there's people who have special skill sets, but these days, you've got to hire for attitude. You can train for aptitude. And attitude is crucial when you're talking about a socially enabled customer base because they're going to get to those people at some point or another. Let's talk about policy. This is another great one. A lot of companies don't have written policies. For instance, Applebee's got a real hammering in social media after they fired a waitress who I think posted a picture of a snarky comment a customer left on another waitress's ticket about tips. Well, that was in the policy handbook, this great big thing Applebee's had, but nobody knew it in the company. Club 24 in England fired an employee for something she said about her bosses, and then the bosses sued her about the things they said, and they lost because the policy wasn't clear enough that they were suing around. Big mistake. An HMV a couple of weeks ago, this is a British music retailer, laid off a whole bunch of people in the social media department. But they didn't have any policy in place to secure the accounts. So guess what happened on Twitter? With HMV's name, everybody who was getting laid off and was upset got to tweet about how awful their boss was. Not a great approach. So what you've got to do is you've got to have a written policy. You've got to explain to people what's expected of them, what they should be doing with social media, what their participation is supposed to entail, and you've got to make it clear. In fact, when I got to Sugar, we didn't have a social media policy, and I wrote it. And I know what you're saying. They let that guy write the social media policy. But it's very important to do that. And it doesn't have to be restrictive necessarily. It doesn't have to be draconian. It can be very straightforward. People get this stuff now. They understand if you spell it out to them. If you say, listen, you over there in engineering, I know you're excited about what you're blogging about what you're working on, and you're blogging about all the time, but don't put out things about features we're going to introduce before we've announced them because it's bad for our company. Just let people know what's expected of them. It's important. Put it in writing for them. And create internal policies for managing your social media accounts. And that means including the password management and account controls so you don't get a replay of what happened to HMV. And third, this is really the core of things. Pay attention. And like I said, not just paying attention to the things that you're hearing from social media from your customers. Pay attention to the context in which you're broadcasting out to them. First example there, Qantas. They launched a contest called Qantas Luxury. And they asked people to tell about their wonderful experiences with Qantas Luxury. That day, they had a labor dispute that grounded the entire Qantas fleet, which meant a lot of people all over the world were stuck in airports, not able to fly anywhere, and then they were being asked to talk about Qantas Luxury on Twitter. So you can just sort of guess what they were saying about Qantas Luxury. Qantas Luxury is when the plane actually leaves the ground. You know, stuff like that. Actually, this last week, Lay's potato chips had a hashtag contest, like new Lay's flavor. It's like, list your new Lay's flavor. So they got some legitimate ones up front, but then they started getting things like zesty burnt tire smell, or despair, or I think one was the taste in your mouth when you realize you're the failure your father said you would be. These are not what they expected to get. This is not what you wanted. And United broke a guy's guitar. You might have heard about that one. That was somewhat popular. You can just Google that one and join the millions of people who've seen that video. So pay attention. First of all, you've got to pay attention to what's going on in social media, and you've heard a lot about how to do that today in a coherent way. But you've also got to define and prioritize what's most important for you to respond to. It goes a little bit to what Paul was saying about big data. Know what you're looking for. If you don't know what you're looking for and you don't know what you're going to react to, you can't really put together a comprehensive strategy. It's going to be more of an ad hoc reaction than it is a strategic approach to social media. Assign people to defined social media tasks. And this is really important these days because you're getting bombarded in a lot of cases by people who have different requests via social media about support, about maybe technical issues with your product, maybe sales questions. You've got to be able to figure out a way to take that in and then route it inside the company to where it's supposed to go. That's really important. A lot of companies look at that as this impossible thing to handle. Oh, we can't have everybody in the company looking at Twitter all the time. We can't have everybody in the company looking at Facebook. You shouldn't have to have that. You can have a gatekeeper who is in charge of being a traffic director. And that doesn't have to be a full-time job until your company gets large enough to really need that. And listen to all of your employees for early warning. Most of your employees are out on social media. They talk to peers. They talk to friends. They may get the heads up on a problem before you do as a corporate social media person or as a corporate marketing person or somebody in support. So put a mechanism in place where you can listen to all of your employees because they provide a wonderful listening service for you. It's a great thing to have. And nothing's more embarrassing than having a problem spring up and then getting it solved and the next day have a meeting and somebody said, yeah, I saw something about that on Twitter on Monday. Yeah, I saw that. Well, we didn't get it fixed till Thursday. Why didn't you say something? Well, it's because you didn't have a system in place for that communication to be made. So let's talk about how CRM can help. CRM ends up being, in my mind, the nucleus of the atom. There's things that revolve around it. There's tools that revolve around it, driving value in and out of it. But basically, CRM provides a place for you to store information you've picked up while you're listening. It allows you to analyze that information and look for trends so you can take action. And it gives you tools to filter social media traffic to find out what's important to your company. Again, you got to know what's important to figure out what to act upon. You can't possibly act upon every single thing under the sun. There's just too many things out there. You've got to figure out ways to understand what's important, and I think using CRM to put things into and out of the customer record is a great way to start with that. And with that, I'm going to treat you to a little sneak preview. This is not going to be released until April at SugarCon. This is the new interface for Sugar CRM, which is, I can't believe they let me have this slide, frankly. I'm really psyched. So the thing about this I love, it's got the traditional stuff up here, the business card stuff in the upper corner, and the stuff, we've got integration with Inside View up in the upper right. What's really awesome about it, in my humble opinion, is that we've built into the activity streams social media. And it's not just social media like a fire hose of social media, Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn stuff just pounding on you. It's filtered according to the things you find important about the customer. That's really important, I think, going forward. So that's a nice feature. Now, yeah, you see this stuff can get pulled into the customer record over time, and this is sort of the generic way it looks. So I'm really psyched about this. I think this is going to help people think about this in a little different way in terms of social media. And also, your mobile experience has got to be the same as your desktop experience. And this, going back to the concept of CRM failure, I think you have to take this into account. I think people are out there with handheld devices all the time. They can make decisions on the spot and push the send button from wherever they are. So your opportunity to have on the spot, on the fly, poorly considered things happen are emphasized more now than they ever have been. So while having a great mobile application is important, it's crucial, frankly, for having everybody in the company as part of your CRM efforts and your social media efforts. It's also important to realize that as you roll out powerful things like this, that power also comes with great responsibility. So be aware of that. And one last thing, as I try to speed through this thing so Brent can go home in a decent hour here. This is one thing when people talk about CRM to me, I always say it's about trying to be nicer to your customers and your employees, frankly. And in this, you see one thing I always advise to people who are practicing social media is just think about being nice all the time. There's some examples here of things that can go wrong when you don't be nice. They don't really fall into the 4 Ps because people ought to know better. There's no P for that. Ought to know better. You all ought to know better. You all probably already do know better, but just to hammer this home, don't be intentionally provocative. Ryanair, it's a company in Ireland, a discount airline. Their CEO called customers stupid for not printing out their boarding passes ahead of time and getting hit with a $60 or £60 or 60 euro. I think it's 60 euros. 60 euro per boarding pass print fee at the airport. So his response was, well, they're stupid. Don't do that. If I could just give anybody advice, don't do that. Don't be insensitive. Hurricane Sandy comes blasting through the East Coast. American Apparel says, hey, if you're bored, go online and shop for our clothes while the hurricane hits. That's a great thing to say, right? People are home being washed away, and turning it into a sales pitch. That's awesome. And don't prolong your problems. We mentioned Applebee's earlier. One of the problems that they had was that they continued to debate and argue and converse with customers in a negative way about their issue with their waitress over the period of 5, 6, 7 days. It just kept going and going and going. And eventually, it wasn't about the initial problem. It was about the social media disaster that Applebee's was causing for itself by continuing to talk about the problem. So let me just wrap up by saying this topic and a lot of other topics are going to be on stage at SugarCon in New York City. That's April 9th and 10th. That's coming up. And the underlying idea of that show is that CRM is for everyone. Also, social CRM is for everyone. SCRM is for everyone, like I've said. Everybody in your company needs to pay attention to it. Everybody in your company needs to be aware of the pitfalls of it. And if you're in charge of social media in your company, you need to be the one who helps make them understand what their responsibilities are, what the opportunities are for your business, and what can go wrong. And as a smart man said, a wise man learns from the mistakes of others, but a wiser man learns from the mistakes, a wise man learns from his own mistakes, but a wiser man learns from the mistakes of others. So next time you tell that little aphorism, learn from my mistake and get it right. So with that little speed session, I'll turn it over to Brent for any Q&A.